Welcome to 24/7 English, where we help you improve your English skills with engaging stories, tips, and tricks. In today's lesson, we will talk about handling mistakes while learning English and how to remember words better. I'll share some interesting insights from a classroom scenario, but I've also added some personal experiences and examples to make this more engaging and relatable. This is a long lesson, but I promise it will give you some powerful tools for learning English. How I handle mistakes. So, let's start with a story about handling mistakes. Last week, on a regular Tuesday, I went to school here in Lagos, Nigeria. One of the students, Emily, raised her hand and asked a very interesting question. She said, "I want to practice speaking with the people around me, but I'm afraid of making mistakes. I don't want to sound stupid. Can you help me?" Our teacher smiled and said, "Emily, this is such a good question. The fear of making mistakes is something that many people experience, but let me tell you what I believe is the best approach." She continued, "Making mistakes is actually a crucial part of learning. I have a lot of experience with this, not just because I'm an English teacher, but because I've also learned new languages myself. In fact, I'm currently learning French, and guess what? I make plenty of mistakes when I speak French. But the reason I don't care about those mistakes is simple. When I was learning my native language, I didn't care about mistakes either." The room was silent as everyone listened. "Think about it," she said. "When you were a child learning to speak your first language, did you worry about making mistakes? No, you just focused on expressing your thoughts, and with time, you got better. That's the same approach you should take when learning English or any other language. Focus on communicating your ideas, not on being perfect." She paused for a moment to let this sink in. Here's another example. When I practice speaking French, my main goal is to make sure that I express my thoughts. Even if I make mistakes, I know that with practice, I'll get better. The same goes for you when learning English. Every time you speak, read, or do shadowing exercises, your English will improve. This idea made a lot of sense to us. It's the same approach that works for many people. In fact, it's like learning how to play an instrument. When you start playing the guitar, for example, it sounds bad at first. You make mistakes, hit the wrong strings, and struggle with the chords. But you don't give up, right? Over time, as you practice, you start playing better. The same thing happens with English. You can't avoid mistakes at the beginning, but those mistakes help you learn and grow. Overcoming the fear of mistakes. Our teacher then added something that really stuck with me. "You should have the same attitude as a 2-year-old child," she said. "Children at that age make plenty of mistakes when they speak, but they don't care. They just keep trying, and by the time they're 3 or 4, they make fewer mistakes and can communicate very well. You know around 2,000 words, so it's completely normal to make mistakes from time to time. Mistakes are not something to be afraid of. They are part of the learning process. Nobody becomes perfect overnight. Even native speakers make mistakes. Think about public figures like politicians or business leaders. When they speak on television or in front of large audiences, they sometimes make mistakes too. But do they stop speaking? No, because they care more about sharing their ideas than worrying about making small errors. That's exactly how you should approach your English learning journey. Don't aim for perfection right away. Instead, focus on progress. Every mistake you make is a step toward getting better. How I remember words. The next day, on Wednesday, I went to class again. This time, another student named Ryan had a question. He said, "I've started reading more, and I feel like it's helping with my grammar, but I'm having trouble remembering new words. I look them up in the dictionary, but sometimes, when I see the same word again, I forget its meaning. Can you help me?" Our teacher nodded and said, "Ryan, that's a common problem, and it's completely normal. When we learn new words, our brain needs to go through several stages before we can remember them well." She explained that there are 5 phases when learning new words. 1. Phase 1. This is when you see or hear a new word for the first time. You don't know its meaning, so you look it up in the dictionary. 2. Phase 2. You see the word again, but you still don't remember its meaning clearly. You look it up again. 3. Phase 3. The next time you see the word, you have an idea of what it might mean. You might recognize it as a verb or noun, but you're not 100% sure. 4. Phase 4. At this point, you know the meaning of the word when you see it, but you can't yet use it in conversation. This is called passive vocabulary. 5. Phase 5. Finally, you reach the stage where you can actively use the word when you speak. It becomes part of your active vocabulary. Ryan seemed relieved to hear this. "So, it's okay if I don't remember a word right away?" he asked. "Absolutely," our teacher replied. "It's all part of the process. You need to see or hear the word several times before it becomes a part of your everyday vocabulary. Don't feel bad if you have to look it up multiple times. Each time you do, you're getting closer to mastering it." How I improve my listening. On Thursday, we had another great discussion in class. One of the students, Lily, asked a question about improving her listening skills. She said, "I can read and write in English, but I struggle to understand people when they speak quickly. How can I improve my listening?" Our teacher smiled and said, "Lily, improving your listening skills is key to becoming fluent. Listening is a big part of communication because if you don't understand what others are saying, it's hard to respond." She explained that there are a lot of resources available online, such as podcasts, audiobooks, and English movies. But she said it's important to choose the right materials. When you listen to something in English, make sure you understand at least 95% of the words. If there are too many new words, it's better to read the transcript first so you can familiarize yourself with the vocabulary. She also gave some great advice. When you listen, don't focus on learning new words. The goal of listening is to understand the message. As you listen to more and more content at your level, your listening skills will naturally improve. You'll start to pick up on common phrases, sentence structures, and the rhythm of the language. Conclusion. In conclusion, learning English, or any language, is a journey full of mistakes, but those mistakes are your stepping stones to success. Whether you're learning how to handle mistakes, remember new words, or improve your listening skills, it all comes down to practice and patience. Remember, no one starts out perfect, but with each mistake, you're getting better. At Unlock English, we believe in the power of practice, and we're here to help you every step of the way. So keep speaking, reading, listening, and most importantly, keep making those mistakes. They are the key to your progress. How to improve your English listening skills with books, films, and motivation. Let me tell you about a few great ways to improve your English listening skills. These are methods I have personally tried, and they worked really well for me, so I highly recommend them to you. The first thing I suggest is reading books. Books are a fantastic way to start, especially if you're a beginner or even at an intermediate level. What's great is that you can choose books that match your current level of English. Step 1. Choose the right book for your level. Finding a book at your level is very important. For example, if you're just starting to learn English, you don't want to pick a book that's too difficult. It might frustrate you. But if you choose a book that you can mostly understand, you will enjoy it and learn new words along the way. Here's what you should do. First, read the book, then listen to the audio recording of that book. Listening to the recording while reading will help you improve both your reading and listening skills. You can do this at home when you're relaxed, or even while traveling, like when you're on the bus or train. There are some websites that provide great English books for this purpose. You can visit sites like greatenglishbooks.co.uk or learntoadbooks.com for access to interesting stories that also have recordings. These sites provide books in 3 different levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. This way, no matter your skill level, you can find something suitable. Step 2. Listen to the news in English. Another thing you can try is listening to the news in English. This can be really helpful because news stories often use everyday language, and you can hear how people really speak. There's a website called newsforeveryone.com that provides news stories in simple English. Just like the books, they offer news at different levels of English. Whether you're just starting out or already know 2,000 words in English, you can find something that suits you. Listening to the news regularly will help you get used to the language and improve your comprehension over time. Step 3. Watch films and videos. Apart from books and the news, films and videos are excellent resources for improving your listening skills. When you have learned around 2,000 words in English, you can start watching English films. Watching films is fun, and it's a great way to learn how people actually speak in real life. Here's what you should do. The first time you watch a film, turn on the subtitles. This way, you'll understand the story and learn some new words. After watching it with subtitles, try watching the same film again without them. Each time you watch the film, you will understand a little bit more. If you really enjoy the film, you can watch it multiple times. This repetition will help you get more familiar with English expressions and improve your listening. For example, if you're interested in nature, you can watch documentaries about animals or the environment. There are plenty of nature films available online. You can also find great reality shows, which are often easier to understand than regular films because they tend to follow a simple structure. Watching something that interests you will make learning English much more enjoyable. Step 4. Spend 30 minutes a day listening. The more time you spend listening to English, the faster you'll improve. try to listen for at least 30 minutes every day. You can listen to anything: books, news, films, or even music. At first, it might feel difficult because you might not understand everything, but don't worry. Focus on what you do understand, even if it's just a few words or sentences. Over time, your understanding will improve. In the beginning, it's easy to feel frustrated because you might not understand most of what you hear. But try not to focus on what you don't know. Instead, be happy with the new words and sentences that you do understand. Every new word you learn is progress. Remember, listening is one of the easiest ways to learn because all you have to do is sit back and listen. You don't need to do anything else. A personal story: how I improved my listening skills. Let me share a story with you about how I improved my English listening skills. This might inspire you. In one of my English classes, my teacher asked us to talk about the first time we became interested in learning English. Do you remember the moment you first started learning English? For me, I started learning English when I was in high school. At first, I didn't like it at all. It was really hard, and I found the grammar confusing. The structure of the sentences didn't make sense to me, and I struggled to memorize vocabulary. When I finished high school, I was still only a beginner. I couldn't speak English, and I thought I would never be able to learn it properly. I believed that English just wasn't for me. But something changed when I turned 20. I've always loved music, and around that time, I started listening to a band called The Blue Roses. I really wanted to understand the lyrics of their songs, so I began translating their songs word by word. Slowly, I started to understand more and more of the lyrics. One day, I met two travelers from Australia on a train. We had a very simple conversation in English, but that small talk made a big difference for me. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could actually learn English. From that moment on, I worked on my English almost every day. I listened to English songs, watched films, and read books. Eventually, I became much better at understanding and speaking English. I even decided to travel to Sydney, Australia, to improve my English further by immersing myself in the language. The importance of motivation. My teacher told me something very important during that class. Motivation is key to learning English. Without motivation, it's hard to stay focused. But when you have a strong reason to learn, like wanting to understand music, films, or having conversations with people from other countries, you will find it much easier to make progress. Everyone in my class had a different reason for learning English. For example, one of my classmates, Emily, wanted to read classic literature in its original English. Another student, John, dreamed of becoming a tennis coach in New Zealand and knew he needed to speak English well to achieve his goal. Sarah, another classmate, wanted to work for a big international company in Dubai and needed English for her job. We all had different reasons, but we all had one thing in common. We needed English to achieve our goals. At the end of the lesson, our teacher asked if we liked learning English. I told her that when I was in high school, I didn't like it at all. But now, I really enjoy it. I can see how useful it is to speak English in so many different situations. My teacher said that liking English makes it easier to learn. If you enjoy English music, films, or culture, it becomes easier to spend time learning the language. How to learn 3,000 words in English. One day in class, a student asked our teacher how to learn 3,000 important English words. Our teacher explained that while you can find lists of the most common 3,000 words on the internet, learning words from a list isn't very helpful. Learning words in isolation doesn't help you understand how to use them in real conversations. A better way to learn new words is by reading or listening to full sentences. This way, you learn the words in context, and you'll remember them more easily. For example, instead of memorizing the word appreciate from a list, you can learn it in a sentence like, "I really appreciate your help." By seeing or hearing how the word is used in real life, it will stick in your memory longer. Conclusion: stay motivated and keep practicing. In the end, the key to improving your English listening skills is simple. Practice regularly, stay motivated, and enjoy the process. Find things you like to listen to, whether it's music, films, or news, and make it a habit to spend time with English every day. The more you listen, the better you will get. Just remember, every little bit of progress counts, and with time, you will see big improvements in your English skills. Learning English can be an exciting journey, but it's important to remember that some methods of learning may have their limits. For instance, when you rely only on memorizing individual words from lists or using a translation method, you might find yourself stuck after learning about 1,000 words. This approach can be slow, and there are much more effective ways to build your vocabulary and language skills. One of the best methods is reading. If you're a beginner, it's a great idea to start with simple books. A perfect example is Robinson Crusoe in simple English. You can easily find this version on websites dedicated to beginner readers or even at your local bookstore. Just search for Robinson Crusoe for beginners, and you'll likely find a version that suits your level. This book introduces new words in a natural context, which makes it easier to understand and remember them. There's an interesting rule about language learning. Every important word for you will keep showing up in your life until you eventually learn it. This is very similar to how children learn their first language. When we are kids, we don't study from word lists. Instead, we hear and use the language in our daily lives. Words that are important to us, like milk, food, or play, come back again and again in conversation. Eventually, without even trying too hard, we understand and know these words. For example, think about the word Google. It's now a verb in many languages. No one learns this word from a vocabulary list, yet everyone seems to know what it means. The first time you heard the word Google, you probably didn't know what it meant. But as you heard it more often in different contexts, you began to understand it. Maybe someone said, "I'll Google it for you," or "You can find the answer on Google." After a while, the meaning became clear. This is a great example of how we naturally pick up new words when we use a language regularly. This method is much more effective than memorizing lists of words. You don't need to spend hours studying vocabulary from flashcards or apps. Instead, immerse yourself in English by reading interesting stories, watching videos, or having conversations. When you use the language frequently in your daily life, new words will naturally become a part of your vocabulary. Let me share a story about a student learning English while working in a cafe. This student, let's call her Emma, lived in a small town in Canada. After school, she worked at a cafe, serving customers who mostly ordered coffee and sandwiches. At first, she found the job easy because the customers always used the same words: coffee, sandwich, thank you. These were words Emma heard every day, and she quickly became confident in her ability to communicate. As Emma's confidence grew, she started to have longer conversations with the regular customers. She felt proud that she could understand them, and they often complimented her on her English. Everything was going well until one day, something unexpected happened. One Tuesday afternoon, 2 new customers came into the cafe. They were a married couple from Australia, visiting Canada on vacation. The man spoke to Emma, but she couldn't understand him at all, even though she knew he was speaking English. His accent was completely unfamiliar to her. Emma thought maybe he was asking for something the cafe didn't have, so she called her boss over to help. Her boss quickly understood the man's order and sold them 2 coffees and sandwiches. After the couple left, Emma felt embarrassed. She apologized to her boss for not understanding the man. Her boss reassured her, saying it was perfectly fine and that this kind of thing happens all the time. The couple was from Australia, her boss explained. Their accent is different from what you're used to hearing here. Still, Emma felt frustrated. The next day, she told her English teacher what had happened. "I felt really silly," she said. "I've been working at this cafe for months and I thought my English was good enough for the job. But when I couldn't understand that customer, I started doubting myself." Her teacher smiled and told her, "You shouldn't feel bad at all. You've been practicing English here in Canada where people speak with a Canadian accent. But the Australian accent is different. Your ears just aren't used to it yet. This happens to everyone when they hear a new accent for the first time. It doesn't mean your English is bad. You just need to give yourself time to adjust." The teacher went on to explain that it usually takes about 2 weeks to get used to a new accent. She suggested that Emma watch movies or TV shows from Australia. "This will help you train your ears," she said. "Soon, you'll be able to understand the Australian accent without any problems." Emma felt much better after talking to her teacher. She decided to follow the advice and started watching Australian sitcoms after work. Slowly but surely, she noticed that she was beginning to understand the characters' accents more easily. A few days later, something similar happened at the cafe. This time, 2 women from Italy came in. Their English was very basic, and Emma could tell they were struggling to communicate. Her boss, who was serving them, quickly adapted her language to make the conversation easier. Instead of using long, complex sentences, she spoke in short phrases like 2 coffees and anything else. She even pointed to the items on the menu to help the women understand. Emma was impressed. After the customers left, she told her boss, "It was amazing how you changed your English so they could understand you." Her boss smiled and said, "It's important to make everyone feel comfortable, no matter how well they speak English. If they feel like they can communicate here, they'll keep coming back." Emma realized that language is not just about speaking perfectly. It's about communication, making sure that both sides understand each other, no matter the level of fluency. She admired how her boss had adapted to the situation, and she decided to do the same in the future. By listening more carefully, adapting her speech, and being patient, Emma became better at her job and more confident in her English skills. In the end, the key to learning English, or any language, is to use it as much as possible. Don't rely too much on word lists or flashcards. Instead, read books, watch movies, and have conversations with people. Each time you encounter a new word or a different accent, you're training your brain to understand more of the language. With enough practice, you'll keep improving. You'll soon find yourself becoming more fluent and confident, just like Emma. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful and learned something new. Remember, practice makes perfect, and the more you immerse yourself in English, the better you'll get. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep improving your English with more tips, lessons, and stories like this, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else who wants to learn English. Together, we can help more people become confident English speakers. See you in the next video.